Should I take the whole picture of the whole page or just the front page?
Just the front page. It looks pretty good from the front of it. Doesn't look like anything.
So now we took quite busy now on so episode year for the year first.
Yeah, I mean it looks pretty standard. It looks pretty good. There's nothing really out of the ordinary that I see so far.
He went off base on
yeah, that's usually how everybody does it. So I mean,
so maybe I bet you you can handle it. Since you are the main task guy.
Yeah, definitely.
But why did he use two, like there's two of them?
That I don't know.
What's the difference? Because he already gave me a copy, which I have at home. But which one is this one?
I've never. That one is not a required form for you guys. I think that one I would ask him like, why is it? But it's not required for you guys. I think he just prepared it just for information purposes only.
Oh, so this one is like
yeah,
what?
It's not a required.
990T. What is that?
It's like basically it's an Illinois form that certain nonprofits have to file, but not for you guys.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's not required.
So we can, this one.
This one is it. It's good.
This one is good. Okay.
Yeah, so the only one I would ask him about this, that one for sure needs to go. But
no, this is for the IRS, right?
Yeah, that's for IRS.
And this is Department of Revenue. Oh, this is for Springfield.
Yep.
And you said it's not necessary.
Yeah, I would double check and ask him why he filed it, but I mean it has zeros on it too, so it's like it's completely.
Yeah, it has all zeros.
It has all zeros on it. So.
So it's not. Oh, maybe it's because maybe just for the Illinois people to have.
I mean, he probably did it just to be safe, but you don't. It's not required. Yeah, it's not a required form.
So just sign in and send it in.
Yeah.
Exactly. Cool. So they just worry about now. Also now to client now also very.
Yeah.
So I didn't want to send it in before you approved it.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, just you can. It looks pretty good.
All right, give me there's a black cord like a charger, Samsung charger. It's like it's a cotton this one. Meant to need that free. No, fashion one.
Yeah, no, just.
We'll be out to okay.
All right, thank you all for tuning in to WJC 98.3 FM, your voice of music, your station. My name is Jeff Badu, and I'm a parallel entrepreneur and a wealth multiplier. I'm the founder and CEO of Badu Enterprises LLC, which is a multinational conglomerate in the finance industry. What we do is we provide a suite of financial services, including tax preparation, credit repair, financial coaching, real estate investments, and services of that nature. So thank you all for tuning in today. This is the show Money Talks, where all we talk is money. We're here every Monday night at 7 p.m. Just to do a quick segment on financial matters. So today we'll be talking about how to invest in your first investment property even during COVID-19. So basically just giving you a few tips and tricks as to the general process of buying a house, just in general, and then also what are some of the things that have changed specifically within COVID-19. Full disclosure, Badu Investments just bought our first investment property of the year a few weeks ago. 2 weeks ago, we closed on a loan during the COVID-19. So this is firsthand experience. Unfortunately, not a lot of people are able to close on loans at this time due to several restrictions, requirements, things of that nature. But I can tell you it can be done because we just closed on a 4-unit building that's about to be converted into a 6-unit due to some basement construction. We just closed on that building using a residential loan a few weeks ago. We just closed on that on April 30th, actually. And of course, we have some more deals in the pipeline. And that's all we really do at the Badu Investments Company is we buy and rent multifamily real estate investment properties, primarily on the south side of Chicago and other distressed neighborhoods, really to revitalize the community, provide some stable properties in the community, stable housing, and ultimately make some cash flow on top of it. So it's a win-win situation. And I do think that the number one investment on the planet that you can be in during COVID-19, during the upcoming official recession that's set to kick off next month, is multifamily real estate investing, rental properties. We're not talking about flipping, wholesaling. We're talking about buying, holding rental properties, because whether value goes up or down while you're holding a rental property, it means nothing because you're relying upon the cash flow. If you have 5 tenants paying you, 6 tenants, 4 or even 3 tenants paying you, you're not necessarily concerned about the value of your property at that point. You're concerned about the cash flow and whether or not you got good tenants on top of that. And also with this property that we recently bought, typically we don't do Section 8. But hey, we went ahead and tested the waters a little bit and decided to buy a Section 8 property. It was fully cash flowing. So the property was fully cash flowing, meaning that it was fully occupied. All 4 units were occupied, and we're about to add 2 units to the basement and collect some extra income on that too. So once we finish the basement units, it essentially will be a 6-unit building where we'll be collecting extra cash flow on this. Whether or not we can Section 8 it, that's up to the Cook County to determine that. But ultimately, we have 4 tenants who are paying every single month. We then have a single missed rent payment in the month of May. So May 1st, we collected all of our rent from all of our tenants. And it's a good business. Multifamily real estate investing is a very, very good business. And I believe that if I could pick one investment during COVID-19 or one investment during a recession or a pandemic or anything like that, this would be my investment of choice, for sure. And that's, of course, during the good times as well. So during the good times or the bad times, multifamily real estate, residential properties, I believe, are the place to be. Commercial, I'm not big into commercial because I've never been a big believer of office spaces. I've always been a believer of home offices and basically working in a very virtual, dynamic type of environment. So that today we'll be talking about residential real estate investing. And we do have a quick question. Question is, will you be answering questions on here today? Yes. If you have a question, please feel free to post in the chat box. I usually get to the questions at the end, but if I do see some questions pop up throughout, I will be answering them. So yeah, ask any questions you want. This, of course, will be recorded. And we're live on the radio. It's also recorded on the radio. So this will be available for for you to view it again at whenever you want at your earliest convenience. So that's definitely something to keep in mind. Now, before we get into the main topic, we always talk about a market report. This report is as of May 8th, 2020, so this is as of last Friday. Investors continue to move towards stocks despite unfavorable economic data. New scientific and medical developments in the battle against COVID-19 offer hope. Last Monday saw stocks rebound from losses earlier in the day to close on a high note. Surging oil prices, so oil prices went up, gave a boost to energy shares, which helped drive the market higher. Each of the benchmark indexes listed here closed Monday in the black. The stock market continued to rally on Tuesday. Favorable earnings reports from some major companies, coupled with more states and foreign countries easing restrictions. So basically restrictions are coming down a little bit. And basically offered encouragement to investors. Stocks fell for let me see here. And so basically stocks fell for the first time in 3 days on Wednesday as investors were hit with mixed earnings reports and worsening economic data. So we had some very, very bad economic data that came out last week. Treasury yields increased as bond prices fell. Crude oil, let me see, crude oil prices, which had climbed following a decrease in production, also dropped for the first time in several days. Despite claims for unemployment insurance benefits soaring past 22 million, so over 22 million people filed for unemployment, stocks continued to climb last Thursday. Each of the three major indexes essentially gained at least 1.5% for the day. In particular, the NASDAQ pushed ahead of its year-end value for the first time since early March. Friday saw the release of the latest employment figures for April, which produced several historical statistics, including the highest unemployment rate since the Great Depression. That news didn't stop investors from foregoing ahead as stocks rose again on Friday. So the stock market went back up on Friday. And let's see here. Closing the week. Yeah, let me just make sure here. Yep. So ultimately, let's just take a step back really quick. So we saw that unemployment rose past 22 million. And essentially, the NASDAQ pushed ahead of its year-end value for the first time since early March. Right. Friday saw the release of the latest employment figures, which produced several historic statistics, including the highest unemployment rate since the Great Depression. So right now, we have the highest unemployment rate since the Great Depression, which is pretty scary, actually. That means that, things aren't looking really good. Things aren't really looking good right now as far as the economy is concerned, at least in the U.S. That news didn't stop investors from foregoing ahead as stocks rose again on Friday. So Friday stock prices went up, closing the week on a sweet note. Each of the benchmark indexes listed posted gains, solid weekly gains, led by the NASDAQ, which is now more than 1.5% in front of its year-end value. Which is big, by the way, meaning that everything else is down right now, but the NASDAQ, the tech-heavy NASDAQ, is actually up this year, which is crazy, meaning the NASDAQ is actually up in the stock market this year. So technology stocks are actually on the rise this year. So if you're one of those that sold at the beginning of this year, or maybe a few months ago, that could have been a huge mistake, especially if you're in technology stocks, because they've bounced right back. Essentially, they're up 1.5% so far this year, which is crazy. Everything else is down, but technology is up 1.5%. That just tells you how resilient technology stocks really are, by the way. Meaning that this is the tech. Tech is the future. Whether we're in a recession, a Great Depression, whatever you want to call it, technology stocks have proven that they can keep up with the market. The small caps of the Russell 2000 finished the week ahead. The small caps of the Russell 2000 finished the week right behind the NASDAQ, followed by the S&P 500, the Dow, and the global Dow. Despite sour economic news and the ongoing rise in COVID-19 cases and deaths, states continue to slowly reopen economies. The price of crude oil went up $19.71 per barrel to $24.81. And the price of COMEX gold went up slightly from $17.0760 to $17.08. And let's just read what has happened so far this year as far as the numbers. The Dow Jones is down 14.74% so far this year. The NASDAQ, filled with technology stocks, is up 1.66%. It is really the only index that is up, and it is filled with tech. So tech is the future. If you're not in tech, you might be making a huge mistake right now. S&P 500 is down 9.32%. The global Dow is, let me see. Yep. So S&P 500 is down 9.32%. Russell 2000 is down 20.31%, and the global Dow is down 18.88%. Federal funds rate is at a mere 0%. And also 10-year treasuries are at a very, very scary 0.68%. So a few things to look ahead this week. More corporate earnings reports are available this week, the results of which are of the definite interest to investors. So corporate reports, more and more corporate reports are going to be released this week. Novavax, for example, one of the pharmaceutical companies, came out with reports that were better than expected there. And then also inflation indicators for April are available with the latest information on prices at the consumer and retail levels. Basically what happened in the market was that the stock market pretty much went up last week. It was some pretty good news, and overall things were looking pretty solid. Now we do have a few, and sorry for those on Instagram, I actually have to read the question sideways. I don't know why Instagram has not rotated their cameras yet. But we do have a few questions really quick. Let me just see. The question is, what advice would you give to an 18-year-old who wants to begin investing in real estate? First advice is get your education up. Invest in your education. Start attending seminars. Start attending FHA loan webinars. Go on the website, jeffbadu.com. Read the articles. Watch the videos. The first thing you should do before you get started investing in real estate is you need to invest in your education, first and foremost. Education is very, very, very important. So before anybody who's listening right now gets into real estate, so when we speak today, we'll be talking about the practicality of it. But before you actually get in, you need to do some solid research on real estate. You need to know what you're doing. Without knowing what you're doing, it's going to be a problem. So hopefully, part of your education and your research will be this segment that we're talking. But of course, this is not all inclusive. This is just covering some of the main hits, the main topics, the main points that you need to know in order to get started investing in real estate. So what's the first thing you should do? You need to invest in your education. You need to make sure your credit score is good. So you need to have at least right now, I'll talk about in a second, a 620 or above credit score. Try to have some stable income coming in. And also one thing I would like to note for those filing for unemployment, it may hurt you in your loan applications. Especially, God forbid, if you're trying to close on a loan now and they see that you're filing for unemployment, well, you might just not get the loan. So you do want to be careful when you're making these decisions, such as unemployment and all these different programs that are out there. You do have to be very, very careful if you're looking to get into the real estate game. Always consult with a lender, right? Before you do anything, always consult with a lender that you trust if you need one, we do have referrals for you. Before you buy, before you even file your tax return, talk to a lender and see where do the numbers need to be. How does a year need to look? What does my debt to income ratio need to look like? Those specifics, you need to get in touch with the lender before you buy. So before you file for unemployment, please ask your lender beforehand and ask them, hey, is this okay? Would this hurt my credit report, or would this hurt my chances of getting approved? To my knowledge, if you do file for unemployment, it could hurt your chance if you cannot show decent history of employment history. Of course, banks are very, very scared if you're not able to pay your mortgage, yet alone on time. So, in my opinion, right, anything I say today, of course, is my opinion. Real estate is arguably the best way to attain true wealth. If you want wealth that is truly built within something, a tangible asset that you can hold, feel, touch, it is real estate. So in real estate, you can do wholesale, fix and flip, long-term cash flowing rental properties, which is the focus of today. The focus today is building wealth using long-term cash flowing rental properties. And to take it a step further, we're talking about multifamily real estate. We don't buy single families, nor do we buy condos. In my opinion, it is a waste of an investment unless you plan to live in that condo or single family home. So when we're talking about producing true cash flow, if you want true wealth built within yourself, true wealth is built within long-term cash flowing rental properties. One thing about real estate is that you can always get 75% of the money from a bank through a commercial loan. Today we'll be focused more on residential loans, but you can always get 75% towards the acquisition of a property as long as you have a good property, meaning that the numbers of the property are good, the debt coverage ratio is good, the net operating income, or NOI, is good. Income minus expenses of the building are good. And then also making sure you have decent credit score, not too much debt or anything like that. So as long as you are a good buyer, as long as you have a good profile of buying, you can always get 75% from a bank. Always. All day, every day. As long as you meet the requirements and as long as it's a good property first and foremost. You can always get 75%. So what you need to do is you need to come up with 25%. Right? When we buy our 10 units, our 20 units, we typically need to come up with the 25%. Now, this is where some people go wrong. They think the 25% needs to come from the bank or cash in the bank, or basically 25% has to come from your own money, and which is a complete myth. It certainly can come from your own money, but you can do, for example, equity raise, or you can raise equity. You can raise funds to contribute towards the down payment of the property. That's one way to raise equity or to raise funds for your down payment. You can utilize a second loan or another loan, a line of credit, or something that's supplemental to you physically pulling money out of your bank. You can dip into retirement funds, maybe have an IRA or 401k. And this year is big because of COVID-19, as long as you and pretty much demonstrate, which everybody should be able to, that you've been negatively impacted by COVID-19, you can pull out up to $100,000 from your IRA or 401k account without incurring any additional penalties, right? So you will incur taxes if it's a traditional IRA or 401k, which you can basically strategize on the taxes on that. But you can pull up to $100,000 from your retirement account to use as a down payment towards your investment property without incurring any penalties. You may incur taxes, but you will not incur the typical 10% penalty. And that's due to the COVID-19 and what's happening. So in a time like this, we need to strategize. Right? We need to take advantage of all the programs that's out there, all the stimulus, everything that's been offered to us. We need to take advantage because we have rights as U.S. Citizens, rights as U.S. Permanent residents. We need to take advantage of these programs. I love America because I call America the home of the free and the land of the brave and opportunities. So when the government comes out and says, hey, you can pull out $100,000 penalty free, I wouldn't expect you to go shopping with that money. I would expect you to potentially look into investing that money into something such as an investment property. Now, let's talk about in my opinion. Remember, today, everything that I say today is of the opinion of myself and, of course, my enterprise. My number one way for you to buy real estate, full disclosure, I've done this before. So that's why when I speak, usually I speak from experience. I speak from real life experience. We have real life cash flowing properties right now that we've done these types of deals or loans on. So if anybody tells you anything different that has never done it themselves before or doesn't know the process, I would second guess them a little bit. Maybe get a second opinion, maybe ask around a little bit, maybe rewrite this presentation, read some of the articles that we have on the website, jeffbadu.com. But in my opinion, the number one way to buy an investment property right now, if you qualify, is to use an FHA, Federal Housing Administration loan. In my opinion, this is the best way because it allows you to get into real estate investments. Remember, today we're talking multifamily rental properties. We're not talking anything else. We're talking about multifamily, cash flowing rental properties. Ones that are already, notice I'll say very important, already cash flowing. So, in my opinion, the best way to get started is to utilize what's called the FHA, Federal Housing Administration loan, which allows you to buy up to a 4-unit investment property with as little as 3.5% down payment. That's right, 3.5% down payment. So the way this works is typically you contact a lender, one who you trust and one who understands investing. If you have a lender who doesn't understand investing, it will be tough, right? Ask them, how many rental properties do you own? Or how many rental property loans have you closed in the past 3 months? So basically, you can buy up to a 4-unit building even during COVID-19. It is tougher to get this loan, of course, now. But you can buy up to a 4-unit investment property wherever you want in a desired location or undesired location with as little as 3.5% down payment. Now, the reason why I like this is because real estate is an asset where it has 6 major benefits. It allows you to cash flow, right? And if you need the full benefits, read the book, The Legendary Asset, 6 Reasons Why You Should Own Real Estate, which is a book that I wrote. It's the first book that I ever wrote. First reason why we like real estate is because it cash flows. A tenant is paying you every single month. Whether or not they pay you on time or whether or not they pay you, that's really up to you and your management skills and your screening skills and all that good stuff. Word to the wise, I always recommend that you get a property manager. You should not go at this alone. I don't think anybody here today listening should go at this investment game alone. I believe that you should get a property manager. Right? So on all of our properties, we have a manager to some extent. Whether it's internal management or we do external management where we pass off some of the duties to another management team that has the time and the skill set to manage. So usually on our bigger units, we definitely want an external property manager to oversee the entire process from start to finish. Now, your process is only as good as how much you can manage the property manager. That's right. You need to manage the property manager yourself. You don't just sit back, let a year go by, and then check in on your properties. Do a monthly check-in. How's the building going? How are the tenants doing? Are there any complaints? Is there anything we can do to improve? So you have to act as the CEO of the building. Every building we buy, we treat it as if we're buying a company. So we're the CEO. Our management team is the manager of the building. Any good CEO knows that you must check in on your team every now and then. For us, we do a monthly check-in on our property management team. So the number one reason why we buy real estate is because it cash flows. You have tenants that pay you every single month, money landing in your bank account. You will know whether a property produces cash flow up front before you buy the building. Certainly not after. You run your numbers. You use a platform such as BiggerPockets.com. Use a rental analysis, and you basically run your numbers. And so with that, it cash flows. Let's say you have a building, a 4-unit building, which let's say makes $1,000 per month per unit. Well, that's $4,000 cash in your bank account every single month. Gross, of course. Now, here's the part where a lot of people go wrong. They don't accurately factor in their expenses. Expenses including mortgage, property taxes, interest, which is usually lumped into the mortgage, insurance, taxes, all those good things. Utilities, typically we only pay the water bill in a rental property scenario. If you're paying anything more than the water bill, you're making a mistake. The tenant should be paying the light. The tenant should be paying the gas. We usually don't pay any of those utilities. So water and sewer are usually the bills that you have to pay as a landlord. Other bills you might have to pay include management fees, for example. Typically 8 to 10% are your standard management fee rates. Anything more than that, there's no way you should be paying that. But so 10% of the gross rental income should be factored in on your monthly income. Remember, use BiggerPockets.com. They have a rental analysis where you can plug in all these numbers. The only expenses that you will really see as an investor are your mortgage, which includes your property taxes, mortgage interest, your insurance, and any sort of PMI or private mortgage insurance that you have. Those are all lumped into one bill. If you want to itemize it, the more detailed and granular you can be about the expenses, the better. Because now you can figure out a way of, wait a second, how about I refinance out of the FHA into a more conventional loan a few years from now, once I get maybe 80% or so equity into the property, so I can get rid of PMI or maybe get a lower interest rate. So you do have to make sure you know the numbers, you know how to play the numbers the right way. But other expenses include utilities such as water and sewer, and also the management fee and any other miscellaneous things that come up throughout the year, such as repairs. You should always have a repair budget. One of the reasons why landlords get smoked, over 90% of landlords fail at the real estate game. One main reason is because they don't have reserves. You need to have 3 to 6 months worth of the expenses saved in the bank at all times. 3 to 6 months. For your typical loan, they will require you to have the mortgage at least saved up, some sort of reserves. So that's always something to keep in mind. If a lender's telling you to do something and you're maybe cutting corners or something, you should probably be doing it. Right? They're here to really look out for you because they want to get paid just as much as you want to get paid. But cash flow, the number one reason why we buy real estate is cash flow. We don't buy for appreciation or capital gains or anything like that. So by understanding that your property will positively cash flow, we typically like a return ratio of about 10% or more. So we like to make sure that we can, our cap rate, they call it, capitalization rate, is basically 10% or more. Cap rate is simply the profit that you make on the property, right? Essentially divided by the total investment or the total balance or the total amount of the property's cost, essentially. So profit divided by the total amount that you bought the investment for. So net operating income, essentially, capitalization rate, or cap rate. Net operating income is simply income of the building minus expenses. And then you have cash on cash return. We typically like to aim for 20% or higher. On an FHA loan, you can easily do 100% cash on cash return in the first year, or at least 50%. I mean, cash on cash return basically is how much cash you're putting in. So if your net on a property throughout the year is $2,000 and you put in $10,000, your cash on cash return is 20%. So it's basically the amount that you make net profit on the property divided by cash invested into the property. So your down payment, basically. So that's cash on cash return. The reason why we love FHA loans is because our cash on cash return is going to be pretty high, or it should be at least. And somebody asked the question, what is cap rate? Cap rate is the capitalization rate. Think about it as the rate of return on your investment. So it's your stock market rate, basically. So if somebody said, hey, I made 5% on this investment, that's your cap rate. It's simply the profit, the net operating income on the property divided by the total cost, essentially, of the property. So essentially, that's your net, your capitalization rate, basically. Now, let's talk about, so cash flow is the number one reason why we like to invest in properties. Number two is the tenant is paying your mortgage. Every single month, your tenant is actually helping you build equity in your property. So we like that. We call that your tenant is basically paying your mortgage for you. In an FHA loan scenario, let's say you do have to claim, and I'll like to repeat it, you have to claim one of your residencies or one of your units as a primary residence. It can be the basement in the building. It could be a 4-unit with a basement, or it can be a 3-unit with a basement. Legal, whatever it is. Basically, you have now, once you get an FHA loan, you decide to live in a building, you now basically have wiped out, essentially, all of your housing payments. Housing is typically about 30 to 40% of a person's budget. So imagine wiping this out because your tenant is the one paying it for you. And that's why one of the reasons why somebody asked me the question, how much should I pay for a building? Well, the first question I asked them is, how much can a building make you? I don't care how much something costs me. I care more about how much money it can produce. What's the income it can generate me every single month? What it costs, $1 million, $2 million, I don't really care about that. If I can qualify for the loan and it can produce me more, basically, if it can generate me income that's at least 10% cap rate, 20% cash on cash return, then what do I care if it's $1 million, $2 million, $3 million, $100,000, $250,000? If it's a good building, we've done the inspection, which you'll be required to do, appraisal and all that good stuff, then who cares what a building costs? The same thing with a stock. Who cares what Apple costs? If Apple is worth $500, who cares if it costs $200? Or who cares if it costs $400? $500 is greater than $400. So that's what you need to be looking at, is the $500 as opposed to the $400. Somebody says, oh, Amazon is expensive. I'm like, well, actually it's not, because Amazon will make me more in the long run than what I paid for it. So the cost of a building doesn't mean anything to me until the end. We actually look at the cost of a building at the very end in our analysis. And of course, you will have to get a pre-approval typically before getting a showing. So your lender will tell you how much you can actually afford before you go out and buy the property, unless you say, hey, lender, I'm a good borrower. I just found this great 4-unit for $350,000. What can you do? Can you give me a pre-approval? And then they would usually get you the pre-approval if you truly meet the requirements. But remember, your tenant is paying your mortgage for you. So the tenant over 30 years, let's say after 30 years, now you don't have to pay, or this property is free and clear, right? And then we might do a refinance 5 to 7 years down the road, or a home equity line of credit or something of that nature to buy your second investment property, or your third, or your fourth, whatever number you're on right now. Number 3 reason why we buy properties or rental properties is because of the fact that we get some sort of appreciation. Right? The property naturally will appreciate. Right now is not an appreciation time because home values will go down in the next few months. They've already kind of started going down. So right now is not a good appreciation period. That's why we don't buy ever for appreciation. We buy for cash flow first and foremost. So cash flow is the number 1 reason why we buy real estate. But number 3, appreciation is cherry on top. Typically, properties appreciate about 6% per year. So you notice if you heard your grandma say, oh, yeah, she bought a property for $10,000, now it's worth $100,000. Yeah, it's very typical in real estate. You'll see that over the long run. That's why we don't really care if a property is going down in value right now. We care about it 15, 30 years from now. So don't be scared that property values are going down. If anything, they're creating more opportunities for you as an investor. So that's number 3. Number 4 reason why we buy properties is because of tax benefits. I won't get into the spiel, but in real estate, we don't pay income taxes on our income or on our profits. We don't. If you need more details on that, please contact me, reach out to me, see me after after the webinar or the presentation, and I'll give you some tips and tricks on how to save on taxes. So that's ultimately that's the fourth way. And then the fifth way is essentially you can pass this asset down from generation to generation, right? This is something you can pass down to your generations. One thing about a lot of people nowadays is we were never passed anything down. Right? Nothing was handed down to us. We had to build everything on our own. So this is an opportunity for you to do some good estate plan and multi-generational wealth building in order for you to truly take advantage of the whole real estate investment thing. So ultimately, that is the fifth one. Due to time, we'll just go back into the presentation. I like the FHA loan because of the fact that I can buy it with number 6 is leverage, which we're talking about here. You can buy, what if I told you that you can buy something that's worth $100 for $3.50? Right? You probably look at me like you're crazy. Well, that's exactly what you're doing here. Is you're buying something that's worth $100 for $3.50, and that the bank will give you 96.5%, and all you got to come up with is 3.5% down payment. Humongous benefit. I mean, you're talking about leverage on top of leverage. I love this because it allows me to not have so much of my cash tied into the property. If my property appreciates 6%, guess who gets to keep all 6%, even though I only put in 3.5% towards the down payment? I do, right? So ultimately, and when I sell the building for a profit, I get to keep all the profit. The bank doesn't share 96.5% with me. This is one of the cheapest ways to buy a building is to use leverage, is to use a bank. Of course, too much leverage is not a good thing, but in this scenario, it's a great way to get into real estate. This is my number one way to get into real estate if you haven't gotten into real estate already. If you have a current property in your name, it will be harder to get an FHA loan, but there are ways around it. I've overcome these obstacles before in the past. If you have an FHA loan currently, you can get a second one, but you have to get out of the first one first, essentially. But it's 3.5% down payment towards the loan. And guess what? You can use a down payment assistance program to subsidize potentially up to all 3.5%. So now, what if I told you that somebody can hand you a building that's worth $100 for nothing? I mean, that's pretty insane. If you told me that, I would jump out of my seat in a heartbeat and figure out where I can do it. They have different programs such as NACA, N-A-C-A, in the state in Chicago, that allows you to get down payment assistance, subsidized down payment assistance towards your down payment. All you have to do is go through a few hours in the course on a Saturday or so, and basically just learn about real estate. Right, just teaching you about some real estate. You get assigned some sort of counselor to walk you through the process. Tell them, hey, I want to buy an investment property. So to me, this is the best way to get into real estate. I am not a flipper by a long shot. And in today's economy, you want to be, not saying you should not flip. You want to be extremely careful being a flipper, because home values will go down. As a flipper, you rely on home values either going up or staying stable. And we know for a fact that's not going to happen over the next 3 to 12 months. We know that for a fact. Home values will go down because people are losing their jobs left and right, and the economy is not stable right now. Good thing is the government has been providing stimulus and incentives and things of that nature. So if you're a good buyer, you can really benefit. All you need here is a 620 credit score or above. It used to be 580, but due to COVID-19, they have increased the requirements on the FHA loan to 620. If you need a lender, remember, if you need a lender to apply through or to consult, reach out to me. Shoot me an email at jeffbadu@gmail.com. I'll send you some referrals. These are guys that I work with personally, and these are people that I trust, and I know I can tell you they can close your loan for you right now. It will be hard to get into buildings. Right? With real estate, we have to move quick. We got to move fast. We need to make quick decisions. Not uncalculated, but we need to be quick. This is not one of those investments Well, I'll think about it for a week. Well, no, this is not that type. Now, the good news is you do get some time because there's not enough qualified buyers in the market right now. And there's a lot of inventory that's about to get unloaded or released into the market pretty soon. So you do have some time to think about it. But if you're competing against a buyer like myself, I can guarantee you don't have that much time. We run our analysis within 24 hours of getting a hold of the property. Right? We do the showing within 48 hours if we can get in. Right now in Chicago, if the unit is occupied, you technically can't go in. However, I mean, just talk to the realtor and then try to negotiate something. You can do a virtual showing. If it's a vacant unit, you can go in there and do the showing since nobody's in there. You're not really exposed to COVID-19 at that point. So you can close loans using the FHA loan. You can close loans in today's environment even. So in my opinion, the best way to get into real estate, if you are a recent college grad, if you're somebody who's never bought a property, you have decent income, you haven't been laid off on your job, you have a business that's pretty stable, and you have a 620 plus credit score, and your debt to income ratio is below about 43%, then you are a prime candidate to get this up to 4-unit FHA, Federal Housing Administration loan. If you don't have the down payment, apply or look into, ask your lender for a down payment assistance program. You do need to have reserves. So I would say about 3 months worth of mortgage payments need to be liquid in the bank or in a 401k or whatever else you have. You should have some cash in the bank before you get into real estate. That's without question. No money down is great, but you should have some reserves. Right? The reason why I don't like to go in with such hefty down payment is because I like to preserve my reserves, basically, just in case. I like to use my reserves for just in case, emergencies, not necessarily for down payment. So if I'm a savvy investor and I can get into the property with just 3.5% down payment, knowing everything that I know, I've been in the real estate game for about 4 years or so personally. But as a family, we've been in it for over 30 years. So I've got this, I've seen a lot of things. I've seen a whole lot of things in real estate. So up to a 4-unit building, anything more, you will require a commercial loan, which will require typically 25% down payment. There is a trick to get it down to 20% simply by asking for a closing credit, where you're basically balancing the percentages, and it effectively gets you down to 20%. If you need more details on that, please reach out to me, and I'll be sure to share. That's what we're doing in our deals now. We ask for a closing credit so that our down payment is basically 20%. Remember, the bank will always give you 75%, all day, every day, no matter what. No matter how many loans you have in your name, no matter how many properties you have, as long as you can show you have cash flow and you're a good borrower, you're a good buyer, then hey, they'll give you the money all day, every day. Trust me. You can also do a conventional loan, so you can do a 5% down payment if you don't like the restrictions of the FHA loan, where you have to claim it as your primary residence, which you also do have to do with conventional. It's just typically it's a shorter time period. You can do a 5% if you want to forego the FHA. I actually bought my first property using the 5% because I did not know about the FHA loan. I bought a condo. Silly old me bought a condo with the 5% conventional loan. Thankfully, I was able to get into an FHA loan and buy a 4-unit building with that FHA loan. So it's the same process as FHA, but basically here you're just doing 5% down payment, and the requirements are slightly more strict. Next, you can do a 203K loan, which I do not recommend, especially in today's society. I mean, it's so frustrating. I have a friend who's going through a 203K loan right now, and it's so frustrating. Basically, I typically don't recommend your 203K loan as your first property, because you will get frustrated with real estate. Trust me. No offense to contractors, but contractors will frustrate you. It will frustrate you. They say tenants do frustrate you, but usually we pass it off to a management company to handle that component. The tenants don't have our phone numbers typically, right? We usually have a property manager that we pass everything off of to, but we oversee the property manager to make sure they're doing everything they're supposed to do. So you can do the 203K loan. That basically allows you to rehab a property. So if you're into rehabs, this is a loan for you. I don't recommend this because you will be frustrated frustrated with the process, if you don't know how to manage people, if you don't know how to manage a construction project, and you will have to be basically the project manager on your 203K loan, they will typically assign you to somebody to help you, but you ultimately will be the one to oversee the project. So that can be very, very frustrating. Trust me. I've done something similar to a 203K loan known as the hard money loan. It's about a 6-month loan or so, and that in itself can be frustrating. So 203K loan basically allows you to rehab a property. I strongly advise against using this one as your first one, especially knowing that real estate values are about to go down, because what if you need to sell? 203K loan or anything that's flip or anything that's even a BRRRR strategy, which we'll go through in a second, to me is pretty risky right now. But let's talk about the BRRRR method. This is the last one of the day. There is another one, but remember, we're talking about your first investment property. After your first, then you can step into the 25% down payment world, where you step into commercial loans. Remember, the bank will always give you 75% all day, every day. In a recession, depression, a drought, everybody's debt, whatever it is, the bank will give you 75%. As long as you can demonstrate that the building can cash flow, it's a good building, and you're a reputable borrower, they'll give you 75%. All you have to do is come up with 25% down payment, which can be tough. And remember, we have strategies that can push that 25% number to 20% by utilizing the closing cost method or closing credit method, which basically allows us to put in 20% as opposed to 25% effectively when you do the math on paper. So a bank will always give you that. But here we're talking about how do we leverage these low down payment programs. So with the BRRRR method, this is typically for your second property. This is just a bonus here. Basically, it's buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat. Remember, I don't recommend the strategy right now, but in case you have an appetite for the risk, basically you buy a property or you find a property that's undervalued, and a lot of those will be unloaded to the market. A lot of inventory will be popping up into the market pretty soon here. But you buy the property that's undervalued, you rehab it, right? You will have to put down roughly, you have to use about a hard money loan. And in the past, you can do about 95% LTV, what's called loan to value. I do have a lender who is doing 95%. I even have a lender who is doing 100%. But nowadays, you can only get about 80%. I've had a lender tell me they can only do 75%, or they're not even lending in Illinois right now, like completely, no Cook County. So this one, you usually need a hard money lender or private lender, aka your rich uncle, who gives you the money that funds the acquisition of the property and the renovation. You renovate the property within 3 to 6 months in a perfect world. Then once it's done, you find a tenant to rent the property. And then once the property is rented for about a month, or I know a lender who was doing it, where as long as you own the property for about 6 months, then you just need a tenant, a signed lease. I did this loan last year, by the way. They'll refinance the loan for you, so you can potentially pull out some equity. So let's say that the property cost about $80,000, right? And then the essentially it's worth $100,000 after you renovate it. Those are pretty small numbers, but they'll give you, typically it's about 80% LTV, loan to value. They'll refinance the loan for you at $80,000. Or in a better example, let's do $75,000. You were all in $75,000, meaning acquisition plus renovation. Don't forget about the closing costs. And the building is now worth $100,000. Well, when you refinance at 80%, 80% times $100,000 will give you $80,000 as a loan. So $80,000 will be the loan. $75,000 pays off the hard money lender, whoever you need to pay, and then $5,000 comes back as cash out refinance, basically. Now you have a property that's cash flowing that you might have only needed to put 5%. But the reason why the strategy doesn't even work now is because we're requiring LTVs as low as 75%. Right? So usually in the past, when these hard money lenders were giving money to anybody pretty much, and this is literally like last year, 95% LTV as long as the property was in good, solid I mean, it was a good property. The renovation cost was good. You can get the loan. So just to recap, 4 ways to get a property. 4 ways to buy your first investment property. My number 1 is FHA loan. Allows you to buy up to 4 units with 3.5% down payment. Conventional loan allows you to buy up to 4 units with 5% down payment. A 203K loan, which allows you to renovate a property and up to 4 units. And then a BRRRR, a buy, rehab, rent, refinance, repeat method that allows you to buy up to 4 units. But now it's up to 80% LTV. So this one is pretty much out the picture for now. So we like to use these other methods instead, especially the FHA loan. It is the best way to get into real estate right now, in my opinion. And then once you're ready for your second property, once you get ready for the big boys, the 10 units, the 20, the 30, and even the 100 units, then you use a commercial loan to do 25% down payment, which can be effectively lowered to 20%. And you can always raise the capital, or you can utilize other strategies to get the down payment instead. So with that being said, hopefully you guys learned something. We'll do a part 2 of this segment next week. We'll go deeper into how to buy your second investment property, or how to buy properties outside of traditional financing. What we just talked about today was all traditional financing. It was all up to 4 units. All right, your first building, your first property, FHA, conventional, 203K, BRRRR. That's only up to 4 units. You might be wondering, well, what if I want a 5 unit, a 6 unit, a 10 unit, 20 unit? We'll step into the big boys pretty soon. We will talk about some of the smaller units as well next week. Just using things like the tax sale, which is coming up next week in Gary, Indiana. Very excited about that. So we'll just talk about ways to buy outside of your traditional bank or your traditional credit union or financial institution. So with that being said, thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully you guys learned something. My name is Jeff Badu, and I look forward to continuously delivering you awesome content. Thank you.